Hello, I'm Chuck Phillips, South Alabama Home Inspections, and welcome to another edition of Southern Home Talk. And I figured I'd put this episode together for the freezing weather we've got headed our way. And I'm hoping this will be somewhat informative to you, and maybe this will help mitigate some freezing issues for you as well. And so a lot of this is going to depend on when your house was built. Now, if you have a home that was built in the 2000s, more than likely you're going to have what's called PEX in it, and it is resistant to freezing. It still can freeze, it still can bust, it's just resistant to it. But if you have an older home built before the 2000s, then more than likely it's going to have either copper, PVC, CPVC, but they also plumbed a lot of these homes with polybutylene, which is a gray product that's been reported to be defective. But believe it or not, polybutylene is resistant to freezing. So it may be sort of a good thing if that's what you have. But really, you should insulate your pipes if you have copper or PVC pipe. And really should probably do it for polybutylene too, especially if you have pipe that is coming up into the attic areas. Now, a lot of these houses in the 2000s were plumbed through the attic. And so you have pipe that actually comes up the wall and into the attic area, and then it drops down to services your fixtures inside the home. Well, if that pipe is not insulated where it comes up the wall and into the attic area, which you should go up there and take a look at, that pipe should be really insulated about 4 feet in, because it can freeze right there, because you got your soffit vents that can put air on top of it and cause them to freeze. So, take a look at that. But if you're on a crawl space, and if it's vented, then you can have pipes bust up underneath the house. Now, the most vulnerable point of busted pipes is really your hose bibs. That's what that is right there. That's where your hose is connected to it. Now, I would recommend wrapping them with fiberglass wrap, or they do make these foam boxes that go over that. Just make sure that that's turned off and your water hose is drained, because if there's any kind of pressure on your hose, it will cause your water hose to bust. Now, about half the homes I inspect, I cannot find the water meter because it's been covered up with soil, and because the water company has no need to go out and pull the lid on that anymore, because they can read these meters remotely, and so they get covered up with soil. And so if you don't know where your water meter is and you need to cut the water off, that's going to be a big problem. And not only that, but most of these water boxes are also full of soil, and so you need to clean them out as well. And you'll need one of these, what's called a water meter key. You can pick these up at the hardware store. They're about $10, and it slips on the valve, and it's just one quick turn and turns it off. But really, like I've said in some of my past episodes, you should have an independent main ball valve cutoff that's easily accessible, that you can just simply go out and turn with your hand. Now, let's get back to what should we do to stay prepared for these type of plumbing emergencies. Well, one, like I say, get the right type of insulation for the right type of pipe that you have, because they're different outside diameters, with the PVC products. And so it should state on the box, what this type of foam insulation fits. So as long as you know what type of pipes you have, it's always going to be 1/2 and 3/4 size plumbing in your home. That's what 99% of houses are plumbed with, is 1/2 and 3/4. So just know if it's copper or PVC that you get the right type of foam insulation. Now, if you're going to make plumbing repairs to this plastic pipe, including PEX, I recommend getting this type of cutter. They're about $12 to $15, and it makes it really easy to cut this pipe. And I know you can use a hacksaw to do it, but you might not be able to access the area to make that cut with a hacksaw. So that's why I would actually have one of these. And I would also have tubing cutters too, if you have copper pipe. And they also make a short one of that as well. But the main thing is, you want to use, basically for homeowners, what I recommend is what's called a shark bite fitting. They're kind of amazing product, and they're real user friendly too, because they just slip right onto the pipe, and that's all you have to do. There's no gluing, there's no soldering. It just slips on the pipe and it's fixed. And this kind of I don't have a shark bite fitting to show you. This is kind of one from the 80s there. These were common back then for plumbing repair. And sometimes I find them when I do home inspections, and I mark that up as kind of a defect, because it's made for a temporary repair, not permanent, because you'll see like this rubber, it's got a rubber O-ring, and so what happens is this gets brittle and will eventually fail. It'll just dry rot. But I don't even know if they still make these or not. But this threads right over that. But the shark bite fitting, there's no threading; it just slips right on. But I would have several fittings of those. In other words, if you're going to get couplings, I would get 3 half-inch couplings and 3 3/4-inch couplings, because once you slip that on there, it won't come back off, and you might want to have a couple of backups of that in case you need to make some backup repairs. And I'd also recommend having some pipe on hand too. They may sell this in lengths as short as 5 feet, but if you even have to get 10 feet of it, I would keep it, because you might have to replace some pipe as well. And another thing too is that plumbers, you might not be able to get a plumber. I mean, their phones are going to be ringing off the hook. And so this is the reason why you should know basic plumbing repair. And that's why I'm giving you these tips to help you with that. It's good to have you a kit like this made up with all your tools in it to make these type of emergency repairs. And like I say, the shark bite fitting is probably the path of least resistance for most homeowners. Is that you just simply slip the fitting on there. You may want to clean the pipe up a little bit, but you also want to make sure you fully seat it too when you push that shark bite fitting on. And so I would probably have couplings in that, maybe caps. That's what they make. I think they make a cap in that, because you might want to cap something off. You may even want to put a valve. They make a shark bite valve. So you say, well, this would be a good time for me to add this valve to it. Now, it's kind of subjective about the longevity of these shark bite fittings, because they're kind of sort of like this one here. It actually depends on a rubber O-ring. And so who knows how long the O-ring is going to hold, because all rubber products, have a tendency to want to dry rot. But, they are pretty common, and I've used them before, and they are relatively effective. Now, you'll see up here I've got some Teflon tape, and that's actually plumber's paste. And the reason why I put them two together is I recommend you use the paste over the Teflon tape, because that tape has a tendency to want to turn with the fitting when you put it on there. And especially if it's not put on there the right direction, but it can still do it even if it is put on the right direction. So that's why I would use the paste. It works better. Now this says, what's this paint doing here? Well, I figured I'd put that there to remind me to tell you that if you have any aerosols of any kind, if they're outside, they can bust even in your sheds. So you might want to take measures to put them in a place where they won't freeze and bust. Okay, well, that kind of covers that. So let's just go on outside, because there's, if you have plumbing above grade, drainage plumbing too, you may have to protect that as well. So let's just go take a look at it. But before we do, I'm going to go ahead and show you this. These two pipes are going to a water heater on the outside of the house, a tankless water heater. And that water heater closet actually has some valves inside of it that will absolutely bust if they're not protected. So if you have a tankless water heater that's outside, you need to take provisions to protect the valves that are inside that closet, and even the pipe that may be inside of there as well. So let's take another step in here and look at some drainage plumbing that you may have to protect as well, especially if it's above grade. So what we're looking at right there is what's called a P-trap. And there's water inside that trap. And what that water does is prevent sewer gas from coming up inside the home. Now this is actually servicing the washing machine upstairs. So if that was to freeze and you was to run your washing machine, well, it would back up and flood your flooring. And so any traps that are exposed to freezing weather, you probably should insulate them with some wrapped fiberglass like this here, like I've got these pipes wrapped with. Now, if you have an outdoor sink like I have, I actually have cut-off valves for that. And that's what I've done. I've actually cut those valves off and have opened up the faucet up there to relieve the pressure on that. So it'll still bust even if the water's off if you don't relieve the pressure on it. But this is a good example to show you the difference between a ball valve and a gate valve. This is a ball valve, and look how easy it is to turn and shut off. See, that quick. Where a gate valve, you have to turn it. And the problem with gate valves, they often will leak past the gate. Sometimes they'll leak when you operate them, and they are restrictive to water flow too. So the ball valve is usually always the better choice, even if you have to pay more for them. But yeah, you do want to turn off any kind of outside faucets that may be servicing whatever you have outside, you know, and also there again relieve the pressure on them. Now, it's a possibility that we could have some power outages. That's happened before, where ice actually gets on the lines and they get overweight, and then the lines fall and hit the ground, or tree limbs hit the wires, and because they're full of ice and fall and take the lines down that way. And so I remember back in the 70s, you know, we were without power a few days during one of those freezes. And so this is another reason why you might want to entertain, you know, getting a standby generator, because you can have power outages during winter storms as well. So anyway, guys, I hope this has been somewhat informative. You can see where I've kind of insulated all up underneath the flooring here. That's helped. That's actually closed cell foam. Hope it's been informative. Stay warm.